Root frizz can be one of the most annoying things to tame if you have naturally curly hair. Most all of us have it, and it can really be inevitable. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the common causes of root frizz and also some of my best tips for reducing it. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Gina, and here I make videos all about naturally curly hair. I love talking about the science of hair, product ingredients, and really helping you problem solve so that everyone can achieve healthier hair. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back to my channel. I also wanted to thank Curlsmith for partnering with me for this video. I'm teaming up with them for Hot Curl Summer, again, to share some of my best tips for summertime, especially when it comes to root frizz, and also how to deal with root frizz when it comes to humidity, because sometimes that humidity really just makes the root frizz come out. I'm going to be using some products from their new Shine collection, also some of my favorites from their protein line, and lots more. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is root frizz? Well, obviously this is frizz that occurs at the root, and this is usually due to shorter hairs all over that are just poking through. Sometimes they stand up on end, especially in humidity and in wind. And a lot of times these hairs, because they're shorter, they're not naturally grouping into the rest of your curls. So they're not just laying flat with the rest of the hair, they're just kind of standing up on end. And usually they're not long enough to group into curl clumps. Well, why do we have these shorter hairs all over our head? Well, it can be from a couple of different things. The first one, and the most common one, is just from new growth. Our hair is growing new hairs all the time. This is why we still have hair on our head even though we shed a ton, especially if you have naturally curly hair. Our hair always has different hairs that are at different lengths, they're growing at different rates, so we're gonna always have shorter hairs all over our head. The next super common cause of these shorter hairs all over is from breakage. All of us experience breakage, even if you have very healthy, strong hair, even if you take the best care of your hair, you might still experience breakage. There are loads of causes of breakage, and I've done lots of videos about them. I can link you down below to those. But some of the most common causes of those short hairs around your roots could be from root clips. If you like to use those little metal clips when you air dry or when you finish diffusing, I actually showed you all how to do that to keep your hair out of your face in a recent video. Any type of tension though, right at the hair follicle can cause breakage that close to the root. Usually breakage can happen at the ends of our hair from like brushing and other hair practices on the ends of our hair. But if you're getting breakage at the root, it's probably because of something you're doing right at the hair follicle, right at the root. Also, wearing super tight hairstyles, especially on a regular basis. Now, there's nothing wrong with wearing like a slick back bun every once in a while, but you wouldn't want to wear this hairstyle every single day. If you're somebody that has to wear your hair up like for your job, or you like to be very active, just use a satin or a silk scrunchie, make it a little bit looser. Maybe don't put it in the same place every day. A lot of people who wear their hair up on a regular basis, like right at their crown, will just have shorter hairs of breakage all over their crown. So just switch it up. Find other ways to put your hair up. Use a scarf, use a hair clip, like a claw clip. Satin or silk is really going to be your best friend if you have naturally curly hair, because you don't want any tension on your hair that can cause breakage. Also, very rough detangling. Y'all know I'm a huge fan of dry detangling, but I'm super careful when I'm doing it, and I'm usually also using an oil as well. I can't do this just dry with a brush. If you are going to use a brush to detangle, I would recommend probably doing that with wet hair, but even then, that can cause a lot of breakage, especially if you're just being rough or you're going too fast, if you're in a hurry. And also if you're just starting at the root and then trying to just brush all the way down your hair, that's just a recipe for breakage and damage to your hair. So the next common cause of root frizz can be buildup at the scalp and also on the lengths of your hair. So anytime you have buildup on your hair, moisture is not going to penetrate as easily, your products are not going to be as effective because you have this barrier on your hair that's just preventing your hair from behaving overall. So pretty much in any of these problem-solving videos that I do, I almost always mention clarifying and deep conditioning, because that can really solve a lot of curl problems, but just make sure you don't have a ton of buildup on your scalp. I highly recommend the Curlsmith Detox Kit. I actually use that for this wash day. It first has a primer in it, which helps to protect the hair. Then there's a detox shampoo, which is a really great clarifying shampoo, works for pretty much all hair types, and it doesn't dry out your hair, especially when used with the primer. Also, if you have hard water in your home, I recommend checking out the video that I did all about how to remove hard water buildup, because most clarifying shampoos on their own cannot remove hard water buildup. You need a special chelating shampoo to be able to do that. And so you would want to make sure that you don't have those mineral deposits from your water stuck on your hair, especially at your roots, just mixing with products and oils and all that kind of stuff that can just lead to more frizz happening at the root. So the detox kit also comes with a conditioner that I really like because this conditioner is actually safe to use at your roots. Now this leads me to my next common cause of root frizz, which is lack of moisture. We know that our hair really needs moisture if you have naturally curly hair, and a lack of moisture usually leads to frizz. And if you think about it, a lot of people don't apply their products to the roots of their hair because they're wanting to avoid their hair getting way down, which I totally get. But this conditioner in particular is formulated to be able to use at the scalp. I wouldn't apply it directly to your scalp. I just kind of glaze the conditioner over the surface of the hair. I just kind of get it up at the roots, but I really start with my ends. That way the most of it is at the ends, and then I just gradually work my way up to the roots. So really I'm just using a little bit at the roots, but the hair there at the roots still needs moisture. And I also do this with a deep conditioner. You'll see me applying a deep conditioner here. I actually use the protein deep conditioner from Curlsmith. It's the multitasking one. Really great one as well. So the reason it's good to still apply your conditioners to the root, because that hair still needs moisture as well, especially if you're somebody that doesn't have an oily scalp. Some of us have very dry scalps, so the last thing we want to do is dry it out even more by not ever using anything moisturizing on our hair. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not talking about applying it to your scalp. I'm talking about just kind of glazing it over the surface of your hair. So not really getting it right on your scalp. I mean, it probably is getting on the scalp some, but just sort of glazing it over the surface can help to moisturize that hair. Now, conditioners help to balance the pH of our hair, which gets raised when we're shampooing, especially when we are using a clarifying shampoo. That's how it cleanses our hair, but that can lead to our hair sort of standing up on end. So conditioner is designed to be more acidic, just like our natural hair pH, so that will help lower it back down, which then reduces frizz. Conditioners have cationic ingredients which help bind to the hair and just lower everything back down and prevent frizz. So this is why I still bring my conditioners and my deep conditioners up to the roots. Now, if you are worried about your hair getting way down, or if you're using another conditioner that's not like the Curlsmith one that's actually designed to be used at your roots, you would want to make sure that you are thoroughly cleansing your scalp when you are rinsing your hair out. So after you've applied your conditioner or your deep conditioner, just make sure that you're really scrubbing your scalp and using those pads of your fingers to sort of lift off any conditioner that might have gotten on your scalp, because we don't need conditioner on our scalp, just on the hair. So now for the styling cream, I went with the Curlsmith Feather Light Protein Cream because it is very lightweight. You could also go with the Curlsmith Air Dry Cream or their new Shine Cream. Those are all very lightweight creams, and these creams could be used at the roots as well because they're not going to weigh down your hair. Unless if you had super fine hair, then I would avoid the roots. But it's really just about taking the excess product up there to the hair at the root and still avoiding the scalp. So this Feather Light Protein Cream obviously has protein in it, which can also be really good at helping your curls be more defined. It's great for damaged hair. It has wild rice protein in it, so it's going to help strengthen the hair, which can then reduce breakage that could be happening at the root. This does provide a little bit of hold. I would have actually probably had rather used the Shine Cream underneath this gel, and I'll explain why a little bit later, but still a really great cream. I actually like this better with the Souffle from Curlsmith. I think it works a little bit better with that, or the Shine Jelly. As I mentioned, I'll explain that at the end, but it is a really great cream. I just like it better with other gels, I think, because it does give a little bit of hold. So the next common cause of root frizz is not evenly applying your products. This is why I like to section off my hair when I apply my styling products, because it just makes sure that I get an even coverage all over. I'm making sure that I'm getting that moisture up to the root. I'm just getting more even coverage overall. Sectioning can also help you better target problem areas. So if you have certain areas of your hair that are way frizzier than the other, maybe you've got some more frizz around the hairline, this can really help you make sure that you evenly coat every single hair with product. And brushes can also help you evenly coat every strand with product. This is why I usually apply my cream and my gel and then I brush style, because then I know that my gel is getting all over every single hair to tame frizz. So then I applied the fragrance-free Shine Gel from Curlsmith. This is a level 9 stronghold gel. This is super stronghold gel, so I would recommend diluting it with some water because it is pretty thick. I did apply this to pretty wet hair because it is so thick. And as I mentioned, I think I would prefer another cream with it just so that it doesn't provide too much hold, because that can be kind of hard to scrunch all of that out. So it's up to you, but using a stronghold gel is really going to help you make sure that you're taming root frizz, because if you use a light hold gel, it's not even going to really do much for your root frizz. So the next common cause is not applying your gel all the way up to the root, or just neglecting your roots with your gel overall. Now, just like I mentioned before, we want to avoid the scalp. We're not applying gel directly to our scalp, but when I'm sectioning my hair, a lot of times I will actually put gel on my fingertips. So not just on my palms, but on my fingertips. That way I can actually smooth down a frizz right at the root. So you'll see I kind of like clasp my fingers over the roots and then kind of pull gently just to make sure I'm kind of smoothing out all of that root frizz. So neglecting your roots entirely from products is going to lead to root frizz. If you think about how your hair looks without any product, and I'll show you here how mine looks with no product, which is actually my before shots for this video. My hair has no product here, and see how much frizz that I have all at the root all over. So if you're not applying any products to your roots are still gonna look like that. They're gonna look like the rest of your hair that's super frizzy with no products. So you still wanna be taking your styling products all the way up to the root. I would recommend using lighter weight products as I'm doing for this video, except for the Shine Gel. That can be a little bit on the heavy side, but just mix it with some water or go with something like the Shine Jelly, which is a lot more lightweight, especially if you're worried about your roots getting weighed down. That's what I would recommend doing, but still getting those products all the way to the scalp is what is going to help tame the root frizz. Gels are typically more lightweight as well, so if you're really worried about your hair getting weighed down, you could skip applying your curl cream to your roots and just apply your gel to your roots. Gels have more water in them, especially if you're using a very liquidy gel like the Shine Jelly. That one would be great at the root. It's not gonna weigh it down or anything, whereas the Shine Gel, it's a little bit thicker, it's pretty strong hold, so I could totally see that maybe weighing down someone's hair at the root if you had super fine hair, but I would definitely mix it with some water. So the next common cause of root frizz is not really styling your hair and just kind of slapping on some product. If you just rinse out your conditioner and then you apply some curl cream or some gel over to the surface of your hair and you scrunch it in and you go, I love that you're trying to be efficient, and that is definitely faster, but if you think about it, the inner layers of your hair are not really getting any product at all. So that's gonna lead to a ton of frizz just poking through all over. And I'll show you how it looks up close. Basically, the inner layers of the hair have not a lot of product on them because you didn't take the time to actually section and more evenly apply everything. Now there's ways to still section your hair and get your products on faster. You can just skip brush styling altogether and just kind of rake them in like 2 or 3 sections. But especially if you have very thick hair, if your hair's thicker than mine, you definitely need to be sectioning off your hair, or else the inner layers aren't even getting product. And that root frizz is just poking through from underneath all over. So if you're just coating the surface, it's not gonna help as much with root frizz. So I love to brush style my hair because it not only evenly coats every strand of hair, but I'm also able to create curl clumps. If you're actually styling your hair with a brush, it's smoothing out every strand, which smooths out tangles, it smooths out frizz, and it really helps to group frizz into curl clumps, especially if you have a lot of shorter hairs or any gray hairs. Whenever I'm styling the gray areas of my hair, I always use a brush because that's really gonna help group it into a curl clump. And if you see a piece of hair, like a gray hair that's just kind of sticking out wild, pick up a section of hair around that and really try and like group it into a curl clump. Sometimes I will even finger coil, or I'll even finger coil after I brush coil my hair, just to really help encourage that to take a uniform curl shape. That way it gets tucked away, and it will still stay like that when it dries. And if it's still poking through, you could just kind of do a little touch up with some finger coiling, or you can kind of just tuck it in just to hide it and kind of tame any frizzy pieces that are just kind of going rogue. So the next common cause of root frizz is aggressively scrunching your hair, or scrunching your hair with your hands that are kind of sticky. So if you've ever noticed, sometimes when you scrunch your hair, like when you're applying your gel, your hair might kind of stick to it, and that's creating frizz. So if you experience a lot of frizz when you're scrunching your hair after you're styling and stuff, I would make sure that your hands are wet. You can even apply some product. Sometimes I'll apply a little bit of gel, just a small amount, and then mix it with some water in my hands and then scrunch my hair. A general rule of thumb is to only touch your wet hair with wet hands and only touch your dry hair with dry hands. That's gonna avoid any of that stickiness that's just gonna create friction and cause frizz, especially at the root if you're scrunching right at the root. And I do recommend scrunching at the root because that's gonna help you get more curl definition and volume right at the roots. So I saw this tip on Instagram that I had to share because it can be game changing if you really experience frizz when you're scrunching. It's by Natural Freckles and Curls. I'll put her handle here on the screen, but she calls this the wet micro method. So it's basically like micro plopping, which is where you scrunch your hair with a hair towel, but it's using a plastic shower cap to reduce frizz. So what you're gonna do is take a plastic shower cap. You can add a little bit of water to it if you want. You could even apply a little bit of gel to it, and then use that to scrunch your hair. And the theory is that this is not gonna create as much frizz as maybe a hair towel, which can absorb product and also maybe cause a little bit of friction by touching your hair with a towel. And this is not going to cause any frizz because it's flat plastic, and it's also not absorbing anything either. So if you really like those juicy curl clumps, definitely try this out. I definitely got very thick curl clumps with this because it was keeping all of that water in my hair versus scrunching the water out with a hair towel. Now I do still do that at the end with a hair towel because I don't like to diffuse my hair forever and I don't want to wait for it to dry forever. So I still do absorb the excess water, but this is a good technique, especially if you have low porosity hair and you struggle with getting products to absorb. That way you're kind of massaging them in without having to touch them with your hands, which could cause that stickiness. So I'll put her Instagram Reels post down below. Definitely check her out. I've also seen some people use a t-shirt or even like a satin or silk pillowcase or a scarf to scrunch their hair to just reduce frizz even more. So here's a tip if you did experience frizz after scrunching or just after you were done styling that you can't seem to tame. Take a little bit of your gel and apply it to your palm and then add some water, or just make sure your hands are wet and kind of mix it together, and then just sort of glaze over the surface of your hair or pick up any areas that are frizzy and just kind of twirl them just to tuck in that frizz. And this just helps to kind of smooth over the canopy of the hair, especially if you're experiencing a lot of frizz right at your root. This is a good way to kind of just smooth over it and tame it down before you go in and diffuse. You could also just use a little bit of a hairspray. This is a really good tip if your gel is not strong enough hold and you just cannot get a hold. Definitely take a hairspray and just kind of spritz over like the surface of your hair. I would definitely use a water-based hairspray instead of like an aerosol one that could dry out your curls. Just make sure it's free of alcohol and just kind of spritz the top section, and that will really tame any flyaways. So now it's time to diffuse, and one of the main causes of root frizz when you're diffusing is not properly diffusing your roots. So improper diffusing methods overall can definitely lead to root frizz. Now I love using my diffuser prongs to create lots of root lift and volume. This is one of the main reasons I like to diffuse, and as I've mentioned before, diffusing is so much better for taming frizz in my opinion and creating more curl definition because we have so much more control over how our hair dries versus air drying where it's just kind of exposed to the air. It could have wind hitting it, it could have humidity in the air, and you just end up with more frizz usually. So when you're diffusing, to reduce frizz overall and root frizz, be mindful of the temperature that you're using on your dryer. Make sure it's not getting too hot. I recommend using a medium heat setting. On the Curlsmith deep frizz dryer though, I can actually use the high heat setting and it's still not too hot. So just make sure your dryer isn't getting too hot. And then also pay close attention to the speed or the fan speed. I usually use a low fan speed because if you put it up too high, it's gonna blow the hair all over. So if you were putting those diffuser prongs right at your root and you're seeing hairs just getting blown everywhere, like the frizz is forming as you're diffusing, then maybe you have your dryer on too high of speed, or maybe your diffuser isn't very great at diffusing the air, and that's giving you root frizz from that airflow. Another thing you can do is pay close attention to the direction that you're holding the diffuser. So I've shown this in a video before on common mistakes when you're diffusing that cause frizz, and one of those is the direction of the dryer. So if you are pointing your diffuser straight up the hair shaft, it's blowing that hair straight up. It's going against the cuticle, which is just causing frizz, especially at the roots if you're doing that to get root volume. All you need to do is just slightly tweak the angle at which you're holding your diffuser. So instead of pointing it straight up, focus it more pointing towards your head. So actually hold the diffuser towards your head like you were angling it towards like your eyebrow area at the root. And just that little tweak can really help direct the frizz inward instead of blowing that frizz out, which is causing root frizz. Also, the time that you're holding it there. If you hold your diffuser too long in one area, it's just going to sort of like over dry your hair and scrunch out the gel cast for you with the air. Plus the high heat, if you're holding it for too long, can also lead to frizz. So in general, just keep it moving, but not too fast. You don't want to be diffusing kind of crazy all over the place. Just make sure you're moving it around slowly. Once you feel your hair to kind of heat up, then move to another section. So this is probably like my best tip out of the entire video for taming root frizz. And this is frizz that can happen after you're done styling altogether. This is usually when I get root frizz. If you're seeing little hairs poking through all over, one way to tame them is, again, take a little bit of gel, add some water to your hands, and just smooth over the surface. This is what I mentioned before when your hair was wet, but it's actually more effective when your hair is dry. Also, if you don't have any hold in your hair, then you probably need a stronger hold gel. Like if you don't have any gel casts in your hair, then you're not gonna be able to tame any frizz really. But if for some reason you didn't use enough gel in your hair and it was just too soft, or you just didn't have any hold at the roots, if you apply the gel to hair that is already dry, it's gonna give you more hold as opposed to when it's wet. So that's a good way to just kind of touch up without having to go in and wet your hair or anything. You can just glaze a little bit of gel over the surface, and that will really tame the root frizz. And the same goes for using a hairspray. This has the same effect on the hair, just to sort of touch up at the end of your routine. So I usually will dilute the gel as well, just to make it a little bit thinner, but if you really need more hold and it's not doing the trick, then don't dilute it and just go right in on top of dry hair with gel. You can also kind of tuck that frizz away too, and I like to do this a lot of times when I'm refreshing. I'll just pick up a curl clump that's near the frizz and just kind of twirl it to kind of tuck it in, or I will even use my fingers almost like a comb to kind of tuck away the frizz. So I do this a lot of times after I scrunch out my gel cast. If I'm really seeing hairs poke through, I'll just sort of go like that to kind of just sort of tuck it in almost like a comb without, you know, making my hair be flat at the roots. So here are my final results after I'm done styling my hair. I'm going to leave this gel cast in my hair because I'm gonna be outside all day today and I want that to really hold up in the humidity. So I just left it like this. It will gradually release throughout the day, but if you did want to scrunch it out, you could totally do that because this gel gives a pretty strong hold. So I also wanted to show you how my hair looked on day 2. It held up really well, and I actually did end up scrunching out some of the gel cast, or actually most of it, on day 1 because I just wanted it to look a little bit softer, but I waited towards the end of the day, like once it was completely dry, and I used a little bit of oil and it still held up really well. I do have like a texture in my hair, and I think that's from combining these two products because, as I mentioned, the Featherlight Protein Cream does have hold to it, and the Shine Gel is a pretty strong hold. So I think these two together might have been a little too much hold, but if your hair is very fine and you like kind of that texture feeling and you need a little bit of texture to kind of get volume, then it might be good for that. And if you're really struggling with frizz, then it does definitely tame frizz. I had to do barely any refreshing today for day 2. It held up really great. I just did a few touch-ups. So now here's how my hair looks after doing a few touch-ups, barely any root frizz at all. I also do that same trick that I talked about where I mix a little bit of gel and water and just kind of tame the root frizz. I did diffuse a little bit just to kind of set that in place. And again, if you're still seeing a ton of root frizz after refreshing, I would take a little bit of water and just kind of smooth over it. Sometimes your gel can be reactivated with water. This Shine Gel definitely can be, so you can even just use water sometimes to just sort of tame that root frizz and just kind of tuck it in as you're doing that, and the root frizz will just kind of be hidden and not so obvious. I also fluffed my roots. One thing to keep in mind though, if you do fluff your roots, you're probably gonna end up with some root frizz, but to me that's okay because it actually helps to create volume. I'm not trying to completely get rid of root frizz altogether. I just want to kind of tame it on the surface, but I'm okay with some of it being on the inner layers, which is why I usually fluff and scrunch out the gel cast right at the root versus going on top. I don't always scrunch right on top. I just do it underneath instead of doing it on top, which could cause that root frizz. So here's how my roots looked after I was done refreshing. I do still have some root frizz because, as I mentioned in the beginning, it is inevitable to have root frizz if you have naturally curly hair, especially if you have lots of new growth happening. I'm recovering from an iron deficiency that I've talked about here on my channel, and I lost a lot of hair from that, and I was experiencing a ton of shedding. I still am, but it's definitely gotten better. My levels are finally in the normal range, but because of that, I have a ton of new growth happening, which is a good sign. My hair is growing back in, but I just have these shorter pieces all over, and I'm noticing it so much more now, so that's why I wanted to make this video, to just help you all out, because I've definitely been experiencing it a ton. But I've just kind of learned to deal with it. Like, I know I'm not gonna completely get rid of it, especially if you have a tight curl pattern. You're definitely gonna have root frizz. If you have wavier hair, then it's a little bit easier for that hair to kind of lay flatter. But if you have tight curly hair, or if you've recently experienced some shedding and it's now growing back in, it's totally normal. You're not going to completely be able to get rid of it. The goal is just to help the curls at the root look a little bit better. That way, even if you do have some frizz, it's totally fine, and it's even giving you some volume, so it's totally okay. It's not going to be perfect, so be sure to check out the Curlsmith products. I will link you to all of them down below. I also have a 10% off discount code that you can use on your first order from Curlsmith. I'll have that listed down below as well. So if you enjoyed this video, I definitely think you should check out the one that I did all about the common mistakes that might be causing frizz as you were styling. There's a lot more mistakes that can be happening that can be causing frizz all over the lengths of your hair. So check out that video. It will be linked right here on the screen, and I will talk to you over there. Bye everyone.